Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to know if AI can help people who are geography challenged.
Gentleman, time has expired.
I request that question and response be removed from the record. I do have some questions. In my district, we have the National Computer Forensics Institute, which deals with cyber crime. And what I'm wondering about is with the emergence of and evolution of AI, what are we putting in place because of the potential that creates for committing crime and for solving crime? Dr. Persons, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, certainly in one of the areas we did, thank you for the question, one of the areas we did look at in general was just criminal justice. So and just the risks that are there in terms of the social risks, making sure the scales are balanced exactly as they ought to be, that justice is blind and so on was the focus of that. However, in terms of the criminal forensics, AI could be a tool that helps suss out what happened, in a retrospective sense, what happened. But again, it's an augmentation. It's helping the forensic analysts who would know what things look like. And the algorithm would need to, in the machine learning sense of things, would need to learn what the risks might be going forward so that you perhaps could identify things more proactively and perhaps in near or at real time. So that's the opportunity for this. Again, AI as a tool in cyber was a key message we heard moving forward.
Any thoughts on that?
So today, we're already starting to see some of the security problems with the methods that we're creating. For example, that there's a new class of attack called adversarial examples, where researchers are able to craft like a physical patch that you could print out and put on any object. They'll make a computer vision system think that it's whatever object you want it to be. So you could put that on a stop sign and confuse a self-driving car, for example. So these sorts of ways of subverting these powerful systems is something we're going to have to solve and going to have to work on, just like we've been working on computer security for more conventional systems. And I think that the way to think about if you could successfully build and deploy an AGI, what that would look like in many ways, it's kind of like the internet in terms of being very deeply integrated in people's lives, but also having this increasing amount of autonomy and representation and taking action on people's behalves. And so you'll have kind of this question of how do you make sure, first of all, that's something that could be great for security if these systems are well built and have safety in their core and are very hard to subvert. But also if it's possible for people to hack them or to cause them to do things that are not aligned with the value of the operator, then I think that you can start having very large-scale disruption.
It also concerns me in the context of, it was announced a couple of weeks ago that the United States plans to form a space corps. We know that China has been very aggressive in militarizing space. If you have any thoughts on that discussion of how artificial intelligence will be used in regard to space, communication systems that are highly vulnerable already, I think that there's some additional vulnerability that would be created. Any thoughts on that? And any one of the three of the panelists?
Yes, sir. So in terms of the risk in space, obviously one of the key concerns for AI is weaponization, which I think is part of that, and so much less the space domain or any other one. And so I know our Defense Department has key leadership thinking on this and working strategically on how do we operate in an environment where we have to assume there's going to be the adversary might not operate in the ethical framework that we do, and to defeat that. But there's no simple answer at this time other than our Defense Department is thinking about it and working on it.
And he's not here, obviously, to testify, but in Dr. Carbonell's testimony, he made a statement that we need to produce more AI researchers, especially more U.S. citizen or permanent resident AI researchers. And I think that kind of plays into that issue of how do we deal with AI in space. That's one of the reasons why I've been pushing for a college program like an ROTC program to recruit people into the Space Corps in these areas, start identifying students when they're maybe even in junior high, and scholarship them and through college to get them into these positions. Any thoughts on that?
I'll just answer quickly and just say I think, as Dr. Lee has, I think, elegantly pointed out before, this is really an interdisciplinary thing. I think there's going to be a need for sort of the STEAM specialists that particularly focus on this, but I think any particular vocation is going to be impacted in one way or the other. Just like you could imagine rewinding a couple decades or a few decades, I'll date myself, but when the advent of the personal computer, the PC coming in, and how that affected now, we walk into any vocation and someone's using a PC or something like that, and it's not unusual, but at the time you had to learn how to augment yourself or your task with that. And I think that will be the case.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to add this final thought is that we've had to deal with some major hacks, federal government systems that are hacked, and what we're faced with, we're competing with the private sector for the best and brightest in terms of cybersecurity. We're going to find ourselves in the same situation with AI experts, the truly skilled people. And that's why I'm suggesting that we may need to start thinking about how do we recruit these people and get them in, as employees of the federal government. And that was my thoughts on setting up an ROTC type program where we recruit people in, we scholarship them, whether it's for cybersecurity or for AI. And with a 4 or 5 year commitment to work for the federal government, because there's going to be tremendous competition, and the federal government has a very difficult time competing for those type people. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.